everyone for joining us. I'm Yvonne Kafik, and I'm the Executive Director of Triathlon Saskatchewan. I want to acknowledge that Triathlon Saskatchewan operates out of Treaty 6, Treaty 4, and we represent all athletes and members of Treaty 2, Treaty 5, Treaty 8, and Treaty 10 territory. We acknowledge the keepers of the land who keep it healthy and the importance of the treaties to protect it. The land is so important to our sport and lives, and we simply couldn't exist without it. We thank you for allowing us to carry out our vision of creating a vibrant, diverse, and healthy multi-sport community where all belong, feel welcome, and inspired to dream and achieve goals that are important to them. This evening, we're joined by Terry and Marlene Hooper, who are no stranger to Saskatchewan and officiating. They've got their prints all over every policy that we have for triathlon in Saskatchewan. They started out at the grassroots level, not just in triathlon, but many sports, and worked their way up from provincial technical official to national technical officials to continental technical officials, and have officiated every level of event. So Terry and Marlene met with us last month to meet with officials who had been engaged last year and to do a debrief and talk about planning for 2026. And they agreed to come back to talk about officiating, from an assistant perspective. So if you're new to being an official, what's involved in sharing their experience. And so I'm just going to turn it over to Terry Marlene. I will say that in the chat, if you look in the chat, you should be able to see that there's a link to an expression of interest in officiating form. So I'd love to leave this evening with some, thinking or thoughts or expressions of interest in specific events where you're located. And then I'll follow up a little bit at the end, because we want to create a kit for officials this year, and I need to get some numbers of things to order. So we'll talk about that at the end, but without further ado, I want to turn it over to Terry and Marlene.
Okay. So when you said we had our fingerprints all over everything, that almost sounds like it's the scene of a crime that we're involved with there.
Well, we want to know who to blame.
Okay.
And I was just going to say that all of those documents can be updated, and then our names won't be on them.
That's
No,
right.
they have been updated, but some of them are really still so very relevant. But
Yeah,
of course, none of them have been completely replaced. They have been updated to the current context.
good.
But I mean, it's just to sort of acknowledge the leadership that you both have, the time, the expertise, like to put in policy and practices. So it's very much appreciated by myself and acknowledged as kind of builders of the sport. And so it's really nice that you've, even though you're in British Columbia, you're still, as you say, your heart's still in the prairies, and you're willing to help us, grow officiating and grow the sport here still.
Right. Okay. So the topic, getting into it for the first time as an official and becoming an assistant. Well, I think it all begins with your interest is piqued, and you might be coming from different backgrounds. Some people might come from the background of they're an athlete already, and so they'd like to give something back to the sport. So, how can I be involved in contributing to the sport as an official? An official being a volunteer, but as a volunteer, you've actually have probably a lot more background. You'll gain a lot more background in terms of your education and expertise as you get involved being an official. You may have come from, like we did, where your child is involved in triathlon. And so you get involved so that you can volunteer as well. You may get involved just because you like being a volunteer, period. And so that's part of it as well, is just coming in through that route. But once you decide, hey, I like to volunteer, I like to try this out, you take advantage of the educational opportunity there is. Like from my point of view, experience is always gained through one of two ways, either from direct hand-on with doing things you've never done before, or you can gain experience by getting education.
Yeah.
And then through the education, that's a form of getting experience as well. You're just getting your experience secondhand from somebody else that's educating you. But there's the entry level course that the province puts on, the provincial technical official, and it's the entry level is PTO 1. And you can attend that course either in person when it's done in person, or through Zoom live, or they're recorded. So you can always go back and watch those. And the idea there is that as a PTO 1, we want to give a low bar in terms of a hurdle to cross to get involved. And so you're not expected to know all of the rules. You're not expected to make some critical decisions.
Yeah.
But you're involved, right?
You're mostly there for support.
Right. And as a PTO 1, that's your first step into becoming an official, and your education at that point on the field is then led usually by a more senior person involved that's an official, which would be the technical delegate normally.
Yeah.
At the event. And your introduction to being a technical official after the training that you've taken as a PTO 1 is usually then by that lead official bringing you in the loop from a communications point of view before the event, and then helping you to understand what positions are available and what positions match up for you as a new official.
Right.
And then giving you the background needed to become familiar with what's the expectations of being in that position. And that's all before the event itself. And then it's all coming out, everybody coming out to the event days themselves, and meeting as a team, and then getting direct hands-on experience, then depending on what positions you take on.
Yeah. And you can always start in the position that you like the most. Say if you have a swimming background, you'd probably prefer to be in the swimming portion. But it's really good to try each of the positions because you learn every time you're in a different location, you learn a lot about that particular area, and also how it coordinates with all the other areas. So it's really good, even as a brand new official, when you go to these events, to work in different, like try swim, bike, run, transition, try them all. And you gain an overall experience from each of those. And that helps you better understand the whole, like how an event is run. It's also really good if you can coordinate with any of the race directors, because although they're sort of a little bit separate from the technical officials, they work hand in hand. So even going to some of those meetings that the race director may put on for an event is very beneficial as far as learning how the event is put together and how it's managed and how it's run.
And the briefings.
And the briefings, for sure, the briefings.
The athlete briefings we're talking about.
Yeah.
For the event. Yeah. So it's so as coming in brand new, that's basically it. And I know one of the things that's helpful is if you're trying to understand, well, what am I getting in? What am I getting into here? At a very local event, there'll be a limited number of officials, which will mean that you could maybe even take on more than one role.
Right.
When you're at the event as well. So you might kind of look after the swim for a bit, and then you might transition across to the running portion as well and help out with that. But the lead official will help you with that. The lead official should also send out a common document we have that lists out, here's some things to think about in terms of preparing for being in this particular position, whether it's a swim, bike, run, transition, wherever, and what things are expected of you during the event and after the event as well. So just read through those things so that way it takes some of the uncertainties away, which can be, a little stressful when you have uncertainties. And once you know the position you're going to be in as well, it's a good idea to go and just go back to the rules and read over, well, what happens in that position from an official's point of view. And then when you talk to your lead official, you're going to find out, okay, well, what are we doing in terms of applying these rules for this particular event? And they'll help guide and say, well, this is just a developmental event, a recreational event. So of course, we're interested in making sure that things are safe for the athletes and safe for the officials and spectators. But in terms of a strict application of fairness rules, there may be some give and take, and it may be more educational than it may be a penalty thrown at somebody right away. And that's what's going to be worked out. And that happens even at the high level events too. I always go back, once I know I'm assigned to certain areas, I always go and reread that section of the rules book as well. So that way it kind of refreshes me, especially since sometimes the rules change from year to year and you want to make sure that you're working with the current rules.
Yeah.
But it's a great thing to be involved as a new official. You're part of a team. Everybody supports each other. The sport of triathlon is good from the point of view that it's not like it's a strict separation of participants from the officials team. There's a lot of congeniality between the two.
Yeah.
And that way, it's not like you're suddenly separate and not to be talked to and so on. You can interact with the athletes and make them feel comfortable, because a lot of athletes, when they go out, especially if it's younger or new athletes, they're going to be having butterflies as well. And so if you can help to reduce the stress and interact with the athlete as an official, that's good too.
Encouragement.
Yeah.
Also, it doesn't hurt to just go online maybe and see if you can find an event that's going on that you can watch on TV. There's tons of them available. Even just watching, it doesn't matter what level it's at. It could be a local community one, a small triathlon, or it could be the top end elite athletes. But even just by watching the events, you'll learn a lot about the whole event, how a triathlon race takes place, everything that's needed, the setup, the takedown, the timing, everything, all the different components that are involved, and even how they work together. I guess the only other thing is if you're brand new, the advancements in technology make it a lot easier for people who are brand new to be connected to the other officials nowadays. And you can, even if you're not responsible for making any big decisions, you can actually hear everything that's going on. So that's a big learning experience as well.
Yeah. But as a new officials, when it comes to the event itself, the biggest thing is to be prepared as much as you can before you come, as much as you're comfortable with, but make sure you show up at the time that's expected.
Yeah.
So that way you're not stressed trying to get yourself in position and get yourself organized and so on. And then be involved through the event and make sure you stick around for the debrief afterwards.
Yeah. And ask questions for sure. Always ask questions if you're not sure.
That's right. That's right. So, Yvonne, was there something that you wanted to cover off?
Well, you mentioned watching these events, and I can't think of one that drew more attention to officiating or officials than the PTO event in the
Vancouver?
last one. No, not
Vancouver?
in Vancouver. No,
Oh.
was it?
Oh,
It was in Dubai. It was in Dubai.
yes,
Yes, yes.
yes, yes.
And so are you familiar with the circumstances?
Only not okay, only as much as you could be as well. It's not like we talked to any officials that had been at that event and got any kind of, you know, inside
Input.
dirt on what was going on exactly. But, just looking at the coverage, because I did, you're right. There was quite a bit of discussion about the things, and there was more than one thing that went on as well. And there's quite a bit to view online in terms of seeing videos of the event. So maybe we should just cover off what
Yeah,
we're
so
talking
why don't
about.
we talk? So first of all, the course. So the athletes didn't recognize that they had completed the required number of laps on the bike. And so the leaders, three of them, did an extra lap. So
Right.
that was one situation. Then the run, the athletes who were on the run didn't recognize that they hadn't done enough laps on the run. And so there were those athletes who didn't complete the required run. Then there were the issue of the timing system was not working. And so then the people who finished the run, anyways, there end up being protests, protests for against the results. And then there was some deliberation, and they ended up asking the athletes. So this is the one I want to get your perspective, what they think they should do, which is not something I thought Terry and Marlene Hooper would provide. An opportunity for the athletes to decide what would be fair. So I just want you to comment on those are kind of that situation.
Okay, so I don't want to go ahead and get anybody in trouble too by making some comments that, is going to throw somebody under the bus. So,
Sure.
so I think there's an interesting thing to start off with here from a broader point of view. The PTO, Professional Triathlete Organization. Yeah, I think that's what it stands for. You get all these acronyms, and after a while, you just use the acronym all the time, and you forget what they actually stand for after a while. But the thing to remember about that particular type of event is the PTO was put together as an athlete-centric event. So the athletes actually are the ones that organize quite a bit in terms, or I shouldn't say organize, they drew up the architecture of what the design of these events in terms of how they should be conducted from a professional athlete point of view. And then, that included, the winnings that they have, because they do have some substantial cash prizes they have at the end as well. But it also there was quite a bit in there in terms of how they wanted the event run from an officiating point of view as well. So I hadn't heard that last part, Yvonne. The thing is that they went to the athletes for this, but at the same time, it's not like I was shocked when you said that, because given the background of what the PTO series is and its genesis, it didn't necessarily surprise me that the athletes may actually have had a more of an input into this than they would have had at maybe other events. Okay. Another example of this, which I think is interesting as well, although not related to this event, but it's related to other events, is the PTO event is a different type of elite athlete, triathlete event, in that it's a non-drafting elite event. A lot of the elite events are drafting is allowed, on the bike I'm talking about here, right? And drafting, of course, is when you're supposed to stay a certain distance behind the lead athlete in front of you that's cycling, and then if you encroach in that prescribed distance, you need to move through the draft zone that's behind them, because you gain an advantage if you're within that draft zone. So you're supposed to move through it and then pass them, and then the athlete being passed falls back. And the whole idea there being, of course, that it's being the PTO event is being motivated by the idea that it's an individual achievement a sport, triathlon event, as opposed to an event where you try and work together with another athlete to gain an advantage by drafting on the bike. So what I'm getting at with this is the PTO event itself has been very advanced in terms of the way that they want this managed. And they have something called a race ranger. These are devices that go on the bike. It goes on the seat post of the bike for the lead athlete, and that's effective for the lead athlete. And it goes on the front fork of the athlete's bikes as well. And that's more applies to the trailing athlete. And as they come closer to each other, that lead athlete's seat post, a piece of equipment, this race ranger equipment, lights up with different lights showing that you're getting close to that limited distance that you have, that drafting distance. Oh, now you're only a couple meters away from being in that distance, and then a red light then indicates, oh, you're in that distance. So now you need to move forward. So it's interesting from the point of view that that's all well and good. It's really interesting from an athlete perspective because it gives you a direct feedback in terms of drafting, and if you're in the draft zone and you need to do it. Plus, as an official on a motorcycle, you're watching this as well. And I was at the PTO event in Vancouver, and I could easily see 100 meters ahead of me these lights. And so I could monitor easily 5 athletes in a row and see which ones were encroaching the drafting and need to be moving forward so they don't incur a drafting penalty and so on. What I'm getting to with all of this, though, is up to this year at a certain point, I think it was at a challenge event, this information was, in terms of the drafting information, it's collected, it's electronically collected as well. And at the challenge event, there was a suggestion put forward by one of the athletes before the event started at a briefing. Why don't we just publish? If we've got all this data about, which athletes are drafting, how long they're drafting for, when are they not drafting, who are they drafting when they are drafting and so on. Let's make this open, this information. So that's part of the PTO thing as well, is because this data now became available for the PTO events after that. And as an athlete-centric kind of event, the athletes are the one that drove the idea of let's make this public. And so all the athletes now, it's not so much to punish certain athletes as much as everybody's now aware, right? But that's part of the mentality that gets back to the PTO event is very much about the athletes having input. But let's talk about the other two things you're talking about now. So I am going to be kind of imagining this a little bit because I don't have direct experience and I never talked to anybody that was an official there that did have direct experience. So I'm going to imagine based on my experience of what was going on and some of the things I read. So first off, you have to understand all of these events have an athlete briefing. All of these events, the athletes are told, here is the cycle route. Here is, well, the swim route, of course, to start off with, transition, the cycling and the running. Here's your route you're taking. Here's how many laps you're doing. This is when you should come into transition after your cycle. This is when you should come to the finish chute when you're done your required laps. So they should all be aware of how many laps they're doing, right? The second thing is all of them have, they're all computerized, their bikes, right? They all wearing, high-end equipment, watches, and so on and so forth. So those keep track of the distances you're doing as well. So there's another feedback into the whole thing. And I think if you heard some of the discussion that came out, one of the athletes, they said, well, my bike said I only did this many kilometers, right? So I have to do more. Well, not all routes, just because of the way that physically laps can be done on a certain course, are going to be the exact distance that's specified for that event. So it could be a little shorter, it could be a little longer, but it's usually close. So it wouldn't surprise me if the athletes' computers on their bikes said slightly different distance than they were expecting. The third thing is that there's all his, this is, you know, officials and volunteers for that matter are all human, and sometimes they make mistakes. But from what I understand was on that last lap of the bike, when they were supposed to then go back to transition, there was somebody that was trying to signal them to go in. And they basically blew by them and kept going because they thought they had another lap. And once the first athlete blows by and does that, the second and third athletes are second guessing themselves, even if they think they should be going in. Because if this person is going, well, I'm going to keep going too. And then you have this cascade effect of this issue, you know. The interesting thing after that would have been, well, if they went too long, too far of a distance, what then? Like, couldn't they be stopped and turned around? Possibly. It depends on whether there's other athletes that are still finishing off the other lap as well, because there's overlaps are allowed in that event, right? So other people could be on the next lap. So you don't want an athlete suddenly jamming the brakes on, doing a U-turn and going back to go back there, right? Because they might get into a collision. But that's essentially what happened there is they blew by, they went back, they kept going, and they did another lap, one more lap than they needed to. And I forget what the distance of the laps were, but there was a number of laps. I think it was like 8 laps or something like that on the bike, right? So they would have done another lap, which would have been fair distance, right? Then the next thing, from what I read, the run route, they had a lap counter that was on the run route. And I know that in the PTO event, they've got some fancier timing equipment that is supposed to put up automatic laps and so on. I don't know if that's what's happened here exactly, but it sounded like the lap counter there counted down the number of laps left wrong. And so what happened was one athlete ignored it because they knew they had an extra lap to do based on their briefing that they had. And so boom, they went by. A lot of the other athletes said, oh, well, the lap counter says I'm done, so I'm going to turn in and go to the finish now. So now they had this mess at the finish where the guy that's actually the lead athlete that did the extra lap or did the proper number of laps, he's coming into the finish because he's all happy because I won. And he sees all these athletes in the finish area that finished a lap early. He goes, how'd they get ahead of me? I didn't see them pass me, kind of a thing. So total confusion at the end, because then you've got athletes complaining about the bike and they did the extra lap there. And then you got athletes questioning, well, what's going on? Because, you know, most of the people didn't finish the run course properly because they followed this lap counter. And now what do? Do you disqualify everybody except for the 2 or 3 that actually did the proper number of laps on the run course? It was a dilemma.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah. So I think it just highlights this part of officiating that can be kind of messy. And how do you problem solve through that?
Yeah.
There was an event we went to really early on, one of the international events. No. Well, you're thinking of something else.
Yep.
Yeah, we went to an event in Britain, and the lead athlete miscounted their laps, and they thought they had one more to do on the bike. And what happened, of course, is in that event there is no overlapping. So whoever's on the last lap is on the last lap, right?
And they closed down the course.
They close the other end of transition because they're not supposed to be going through transition and out for their last lap. Well, this last athlete or first athlete miscounted, thought they had another lap, and they went ripping through transition, and then all of a sudden found there was a barricade at the end. Jammed on their brakes, were fishtailing all over the place, and kind of actually, came up and bumped into the barricades, and then they had to run their bike back. But the other event we were at really early on, the official that was responsible for lap counting, like with manual lap counting numbers, made a mistake, and they actually brought in all of the athletes on the bike course 1 lap early.
Yeah.
And we were wondering afterwards, geez, what would have happened if an athlete and a coach would have realized that was going on and sent their athlete out for the last lap properly.
Yeah.
What do you do? How do you go about now dealing with that? Does that mean everybody's disqualified except for that one athlete, or what?
Well, that was what was going to happen with this PTO. So what they
Right.
decided to do, because only one athlete actually did the whole event.
Yeah.
And so, yes, this is a disaster story. And
Well,
so
Yeah.
what they ended up doing.
So how many athletes in total then did it wrong? If one athlete finished, how many were actually in the event?
Oh,
I would say
Usually
like
20
20
male
or
and 20
30. No,
female,
maybe
right?
there was 40 people in it. Were there? Something
there's
like that.
Usually it's 20 males and 20 females.
This is the PTO event. PTO
Yeah,
event has
that's
limited
like a
numbers.
horrible odd.
I know,
Yeah.
but it
It was
happens.
terrible.
It-
Yeah. And so,
Uh,
anyways, I think the points are well taken. What kind of event is it? In kind of discerning what to do,
Yes.
going to the athletes, if that was part of the governance and the creation of that event, looking at that and I think using a process that's consistent with those values.
That's right. And so I
Right.
think what they did ultimately, from what I believe I read, is that they had for the second last lap the timing point of everybody going across that timing point on the run lap. So they knew at that point where everybody stood. And since everybody went over that timing point before the last lap, even if you continued on and did your last lap of the run, they kind of used that as the basis for the race results. I think
Yeah.
that's how it worked.
And the first person, the one who did all of it right, was first at that point. So it what ended up being a fair solution.
Right. So
Fair enough.
you don't often have to deal with these kind of situations, especially if you're coming into your first event as an official. But it does show that sometimes there needs to be a little
Give and take. And also, if you're a brand new official and these things happen, it just shows that even these high-end athletes who are supposed to know it all, they make mistakes too. They get, they get excited and maybe their brains don't think about or don't realize what the decisions that they're making. It happens.
Yeah, and even the events we go to, and this is applicable to somebody, especially if they're starting new. In my mind, I always play out these mind games in terms of, well, let's imagine this scenario that might come up in this event that I am officiating at. How am I going to respond to that scenario, right?
Mhm.
And make sure that you have some thought put into something that might happen so that you're not starting from chaos, that you've got some idea what you're doing. And also you want to practice the things that you're going to be doing as an official in your mind, at least, if nothing else. So let's take the lap counter. I mean, it's not something we have at the lower end events as a lap counter,
No.
but I would be pretending, okay, the athletes are coming in from the swim for the first time and they're going to be going out for the bike and they're going around on the bike, and what number should I be showing to them first, right? And then what number should I be showing next? The saving grace there would have been for an official that was a lap counter. I'm not even sure there wasn't a lap counter official if they would have been doing it electronically. But normally the lap counter, for example, is communicating, and they're saying athlete 22 coming through, finished lap 1, 7 more laps to go. And they radio that, so all the officials hear it. So if there was a screw up like that, somebody would
catch
pick
it.
that up because of that communication.
Yeah.
So communication is important too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
then
good
if we
point.
were looking at something like the swim, in my mind, if I was out there for the first time with a swim, okay, what's going to happen with the swim? Well, they all start, but what happens if somebody goes around the buoy the wrong way? Oh, well, how's that supposed to work? Make sure that you play that scenario out, especially with the volunteers that you're going to be working with, and your swim captain as a new chief of swim. Are the volunteers in the right position? When this happens, what should they do if the athlete starts to go the wrong way? And then more importantly, what should you do? Like, how do you recognize a swimmer in distress?
Mhm.
How do you then, manage that swimmer in distress? How do you deal with it if it becomes and escalates to a more serious situation? All of those things you should play out before it actually might happen out there with you.
So then in that situation, you need to, in your mind, go through the evacuation plan as well. Where is my response person that I can call in an emergency? Where am I supposed to take the athletes out of the water? Where's the safest place to remove them so you're not interfering with other athletes?
Yeah, who does what? Which
Yeah.
which people on the swim course are responsible for getting that athlete, dealing with them on the water, and then taking them. And then where is the EMT people going to be if they're going to be on shore? That we make sure we know where we're taking them. Play all that out.
And this is why, as a new official, it's really, really important, like I said earlier, to maybe go to some of the meetings with the race director so that you can take a look at the site or just eavesdrop on some of this information. It just gives you a higher comfort zone to know what you're doing. Also, on the day of the event, show up really early so that you can see how things are starting to come together. Sometimes as an official, well, a lot of times as an official, the organizing committee may not be ready for the event. And as officials, you get drawn into doing all kinds of work. Like the first time we went to Edmonton, we were there the day early, and we ended up painting the squares on the start line for the swimmers the day before. And when we were at the PTO in Vancouver, we got called into the transition to take the plastic off the back of the carpet that was on the ground in the transition. It hadn't been done yet, and they were struggling to get the plastic off the carpet. So it's always good to go early to just learn a bit of more information about how the event is being set up.
Yeah. And when Marlene said eavesdrop, she meant eavesdrop.
Yeah, sorry.
Eavesdrop.
Eavesdrop when you're,
Yeah.
eavesdrop was what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's other, like I talked about the swim, you could carry that forward. Like in transition, people need to be putting their helmet on, right, before they grab their bike.
Yeah.
So if your first time in transition, if you're official, imagine that. Imagine athletes come in. Where am I going to be? How am I going to catch them? So I don't have to chase them down? How do I stop them in a way that's not going to upset them?
Because they get upset.
And how am I going to approach an athlete and say, please stop? I need to tell you to put your helmet on, and this is your penalty. Me talking to you, and you put your helmet on, and I'll go ahead, kind of a thing.
And how do you do all that and stay out of the way of other athletes coming in and out?
Right. And how do you handle the mount line, the dismount line, which you might be on as a new official, right?
Yeah.
How do you stop the athlete and that's not mounting properly? Do you have to worry about it for a kids of steel race? Probably not that much, but for an event that is a qualifier, yeah, probably you need to worry about that more. You're on the bike, you're on a motorcycle on the bike. How do you approach an athlete, and let them know they've been drafting? Do you approach the athlete and actually penalize them? Know in advance, talk to your lead official. How do you want to handle this event in terms of potential drafting that might come up? Is it an educational thing and we tell them to back off, or do we give them a penalty right away? The same on the run. Somebody litters on the run. Okay, was that intentional? How do you deal with that in terms of recognizing that and dealing with it? And then at the finish, you got two athletes coming in neck and neck. How are you going to deal with that? How are you going to figure out which one's first? It's likely that if they're that close, that you're not going to be able to count on the electronic timing, because it's on their ankle, and one person's ankle might be ahead of the other person, then they're actually behind them. So how do you deal with that? How do you prepare yourself to make sure you catch who's going to be first between two athletes racing at the finish? All those things are good to play out.
And Terry, like sometimes, like I'm just thinking, like for example, the duathlon in May, we have quite a variety of participants. We have some that this is their first time out. We're going to give grace and leniency and do that education. And you have some other athletes who are there thinking they're going to win the Olympic gold medal. And I was at the mount dismount line and was just about taken out. And it's the same individual year after year. Like, I feel like there should be, yes, lenience for those that are first learning and trying to get their feet wet. They're diligent in listening. They're diligent in taking the information. But then you have these higher end athletes, like I say, that think they're going to the Olympics and they are not listening. Like, I could have really got hurt in that instance, and not listening, not interested in anything that was being said to them, and I get it. It's an event where, are we really going to disqualify? What does that mean to that? Like, do you know what I mean? But I think in some cases, when these athletes over time, there has to be some kind of governance and some rule enforcement.
Yep.
That,
you hit the nail on the head. You just, that's exactly what happens. Yep.
And what you normally do for that too, just from an experience point of view, is you note the athlete number, you get their name, and then what you do is you talk to your PSO, Yvonne, and you say, this athlete has this recurring situation that we've dealt with. They need to be talked to and said, we can't continue to have this happen because it's not fair, and it's actually putting people's safety at risk. And then explain to them that they need to change their ways, in terms of that. And if it happens often enough,
then you do give them a penalty.
Then there will be a penalty, and that you give them that opportunity, though.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a difference again if it's a qualifier, like if it's a qualifier for the World Duathlon and stuff like that. That makes a big difference, right? And then what you could do is, if you've got a penalty situation set up somewhere, you could go ahead. Let's say they're coming in on the bike and they didn't dismount where they were supposed to, and they refused to listen to your instructions of stopping, listening to you for 10 seconds, and then moving on. You could go ahead and you could set up the transition so that, or even at the finish, and you could actually add time on at the finish, for example. Come up with some solution, but the best idea is to recognize that, and if it's recurring, deal with the recurring thing so that they're aware that you're aware, and that they will be watched a little more carefully. And
then do other athletes then think that, like, I guess that's that fair play, right? Like, if all of a sudden we're enforcing rules here but not over here, like, I just was kind of, the optics of that, I guess, was sort of in the back of my mind also, right?
Yeah, totally understandable. And you're right. If you just slough those off completely, that's going to be something that other athletes will pick up on and assume that they can do the same thing without consequence as well.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah. But Yvonne will come down hard on them as a PSO, right, Yvonne?
Well, we tried to, we try to be procedurally fair, right? So, and that means everyone who signs up for an event agrees to a code of conduct, right? So we just simply go back to that. And I think the technical delegates, the chiefs, so you need to let your TD know, and then they can put that number in their report. And we collect those reports, and we've now modernized them in a way where we can see them electronically, and we can see recurring patterns between events, for example, with certain individuals. And then we've got evidence. So I like evidence-based practice. And so the more evidence you can collect in your little notebooks and make sure that goes to the TD, then, those are safety issues. And then we can address them in a professional way.
That's right. Exactly right. So I saw a chat message here from Sandra. It says, "Oh my goodness, what disaster stories." I'll tell you, you can look at it from that point of view, but from a personal perspective point of view, there's no doubt I've learned a lot with the educational courses and with reading the rules and reading the event organizer's manual. But the ones that really drive home and stick well are when things go wrong. And
Yeah.
then you really
Yeah.
learn a lot when things go wrong. So yeah, these disaster stories are good to share because everybody learns from them.
Yeah, and that's why we want a really tight team as well, because all the input will be gathered from everyone, right? Yeah, and there will be challenges. That this is the issue. There will be, and the more cohesive the team is, the better the problem solving.
Yeah.
I wonder if we can open it up and just have everyone sort of turn their cameras on and, share what, any comments or questions or that you have for Terry and Marlene, or what's the temperature of where you are right now in terms of, where do you feel most comfortable, officiating or whatever. I'll just open it up.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna just add something right here too. Dawn, was involved with us. She's seems like so long ago now, Dawn, at the Living Sky event. And Dawn was a new official and she came on board and, went to the chief swim position, right, Dawn?
Yes, correct.
Yes. And so we kind of threw Dawn in at the deep end, so to speak, pun intended. And but Dawn did an awesome job. But part of that was, Marlene was head referee, I think, at that event.
So,
And I was TD. And, we wanted to make sure we supported Dawn as much as we could, to give her as much information as we could, answer as many questions as you had, make sure that you had a clear understanding of how things would kind of play out that day and how you would be involved in that chief position. And then we also made sure that you had communication available to you so that if any questions came up on the fly, that we were there to handle those too. So that's all really important to bring a new official in. Dawn can probably speak from that point of view, as if you're thinking about new position, this is what your experience was, right, Dawn?
Yeah, it was. And, there was lots of learning that day because, of course, I was always of the mindset of this many swimmers went in, this many swimmers needs to come out. And, as you're trying to count them as they're swimming, I would lose count and I would, and then I was getting a little bit more frantic because I kept thinking, oh my gosh, we've lost 3 swimmers. I can't, anyways, but we did have a couple that we had to pull out for medical reasons and one had so we had to pull out a couple, which again, like you say, I had it already a little bit in my mind from when we had spoke on the beach, if this happens, this is what we're doing. And exactly like you said, we radioed that this, participants coming into the beach, do we want to be on the right or the left? We had that, like the paramedics were already on the beach waiting. So everything that I felt like that should have happened really did happen fairly efficiently. But I do think there was a lot of, I got thrown in the midnight hour, really. So I felt like I had enough support to be successful and to do that. Definitely felt like my pants were a little bit on fire for part of that.
But it's a
But I
good thing
think
you're in
that's
the water.
right. So then, and you talked at the beginning about, maybe doing different roles, and that's sort of, Yvonne, I had responded to your email and saying, I did that swim. Do I do that again to solidify what I already know, or do I do something different to sort of get a lay of the whole land before sort of going up, if that makes sense? So
well, you've got lots of time. You've got 4 years between when you first take your PTO 1 to your PTO 2. So you've got lots of time to do all the different positions.
Yeah. It's a toss up too, to answer your question. I know that, you learn so much from doing a chief of a position one time that you're going to do a lot better next time with that experience, right? So you want to repeat that so that way you feel confident going into the next one more than you did the first time, right?
yeah.
But then the trade-off is then you're not getting exposed to some of the other areas, and there's lots to learn there too.
And as you we're trying to speak about the lower levels, but as you move up, you never know what position you're going to be in when you get up in the upper levels. you never know until like a month before, month and a half, where you're going to be in an event. So you almost have to know it all
Yeah, okay.
to function. But that's at the upper level.
And then those upper levels, it's a whole quantum leap again in terms of stuff you learn, even with the stuff you learned at the lower levels, just because of the way that if you go to a higher level event, they follow the rules a lot stricter. There's a lot more expectations and in terms of what you're doing as an official and what the event is doing in general, in terms of its professionalism and so on.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden you become a big fish in a small pond to being a small fish in a big pond when you move up to the next level. But it's really beneficial.
Thank you.
We'll be quiet
Others.
for a while now.
Other comments, questions for Marlene and Terry?
Well, this is Valerie, and unfortunately my camera will not work tonight. I took my computer away from the docks. Maybe that has something to do with it, but good to see everyone. I wasn't sure what to expect tonight. It was just a call out to anyone who had officiated in the past, and I certainly did do a, a significant amount of volunteer time over the years. In the past, I was national level and did that for a number of years. So great experiences. And so I'm not sure if I'm, at the place really to go back into doing, as much commitment. I know it is a huge commitment. Like you say, I mean, you make the commitment, you're expected to be there and you are there because people are counting on you. And officials are a critical part of any race and often certainly undervalued and respected. So thank you to those of you who are on here to kept the sport going and growing. So no, I think maybe Alana, somebody had sent, or Fiona had sent one earlier a number of months ago and was kind of anyone interested, and I hadn't responded to her, but I thought I would see what this is. So, I mean, certainly probably at some point someday get back in, but right now probably not into it for many weekends. And I mean, it's you're you're getting up at 3 and 4 in the morning and traveling someplace or going the night before. And so just where I'm at right now with my work, probably not. It's probably maybe a year or two or more before I'm going to go back into that. So just wondering what tonight was all about. So it's been interesting listening.
Yeah, well, I mean, we are talking about assistant roles and, Valerie, with your experience, it'd be great if we could just keep you on the list and say, hey, we have this spot and maybe you'll be willing to come out again, without
And I
too
would
much.
appreciate that, Yvonne. Yeah, keep me on the list and keep me in the loop,
Okay.
because you never know. I mean, it's like family, really. Even though I haven't been involved for years and years, I mean, you still feel a part of it.
Yeah, and we'd certainly love to. Some of the events are quite small and they're really only a few hours. So, that may be where you might want to dabble, or re-enter into into the space. But I'll certainly keep you in mind and keep you on the list, and certainly welcome you to keep coming back to events like this, because it is a community and we're trying to build that sense of community amongst the officials, and a respected role for sure, and certainly one where the sport couldn't exist without officials. I want to open it up. Vance, you're here, or your camera's not on, but what are your thoughts and comments? As a fairly new triathlon club and an official as well.
Well, believe it or not, my camera is on. It's just I'm driving home from dropping my daughter at the airport. So,
Okay.
And Valerie, have I ever got an triathlon for you if you're looking for small and local? Because the Wolsey one is exactly that. Actually, I've really enjoyed my time volunteering over the last few years, and growing as well. I do know I enjoy the Echo. Last year, I was hoping to help out at Living Sky however, wound up having a scheduling conflict outside of my control. But yeah, I'm willing to help out again, Yvonne.
Okay.
And if anybody doesn't have any experience, I'll tell you one thing. I've done swim, bike, run, and transition. And far and away, my favorite is run from
Oh.
safety perspective, just for the record. And swim was, even though I was really worried about that one, it actually was a lot of fun. Had to very much focus on counting people in and out and staring out over the water. But I would argue that swim was the most fun, if that makes any sense. So that's just kind of my perspective.
Okay, so where are you thinking of positioning yourself for next season?
You know what? Let me know where you need me, Yvonne. Kind of the same as last year. I do want to get one standard distance out of the way, either at Echo or Living Sky, one of the two. So as long as you don't put me on both of those, I'm a happy man.
Okay. Well, make sure you fill out the form, because one of the things I want to do, I would love for everyone here to get your name in there. I'm following up. I have followed up with people. We want to order this kit like this week. And all the TDs are going to get jackets. If we can swing it, we'll get them for everyone, but everyone will get vests and we'll get polo shirts. And we're going to invest in these kits for officials, and you'll get to keep them. And so I have been in touch with people and they've written me back, but if you haven't filled out that form, please do. And if you haven't responded, let me know the sizes, because we want to place this order right away. And also get the TDs in, and all the people who be willing to be considered as assistants, chief of run, swim, transition, what have you. And then we don't have the events up online yet, so there's still lots of time. We do want to get the TDs assigned to events, and then they can start building their teams, and we'll help them with that. So I think Terry Marlene said something that I think is sort of I think the operative word, which is support. When you go
Yeah.
into these positions, you're new and you all want to do a good job. And I think having that kind of mentorship, and so if you do become a TD, you'll be new yourself, but you'll also have that. But we'll also try to support all of you in any way we can. And, and then I think over time, we'll just sort of build this sort of supportive community where people are willing to step up and take risks, right? And put themselves into positions where they are learning by doing. So I hope, and if you have friends that you want to bring in, and you think they'd enjoy being part of this team or giving back in these ways, send them my way. Now, Terry Marlene, I know we're at 8:00, and I want to thank you for coming last month and this month, and maybe we can get them to come back in the new year when we have the teams together, and then we can start zeroing in on specific events and maybe providing a bit more of that guidance and support that we're talking about. So I hope you would be okay with that, Terry Marlene.
Sure. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm sure all of the officials would be happy to hear that as well. So anyways, I just want to thank you. I just, you've done such a great job here, and we want to keep you engaged.
Well, like you said, we have our fingerprints on things, so we're kind of invested now.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, well, listen, anything else, final comments anyone wants to provide?
Always very grateful to Terry and Marlene to be able to share their experiences. So thanks again.
And Jen's a great race director to latch onto as well.
I
Yeah,
wear
you got
many
one.
hats. I
Yeah.
learned from being the athlete to the a greater appreciation for the official as well as the race director. Yes.
Yes.
Right.
Wonderful. Okay, well, listen, thank you, everyone, and thank you, Terry and Marlene. And Terry, Marlene, if you want to stay on, we can talk about that procedural matter.
Yeah. Okay.
And Yvonne, you've got my
Bye.
email now. I'm hoping response.
Yeah, I'm
Okay.
gonna write you back.
Okay.
I read it. It was very
Okay.
good. So I will
Okay, I just
follow
was
up
like,
with
if you had any questions, ask me, but yeah, don't hesitate. Let me know what you think.
Okay, perfect. Okay,
Okay,
thanks,
thanks,
Sean.
Take care,
guys.
guys.
And good
Okay,
night.
okay,
Right.
Hey guys.
good night. Bye, Vance.
Vance.
Drive
Good night.
carefully. Okay,
Okay,
so,
we can stop the recording now, right?
oh yeah, let me stop it.